With the regular season winding down and the playoffs kicking off, we can now take a look back at 2022 with a clear, full picture of how this season has gone. And just like every year, there are some things that everybody could have seen coming, right? And there are some things that nobody thought was going to happen. I mean, two of the biggest storylines of this season have been Aaron Judge is currently chasing the American League's single season home run record. He's 2 away from breaking it. And Albert Pujols in a single night hit his 699th and 700th career home runs, becoming only the 4th player in the 700 home run club. Now, while these have been highlights for sure, there are always some lowlights that nobody would have thought would happen. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that's what we're here to talk about today. Because there's one team in particular that has wildly underperformed this season, and it's the Chicago White Sox. Now, a lot of people had very high expectations for this team. I mean, people were picking them to win the World Series. But this team has been mid this entire season, and we have been waiting and waiting for them to get it going, and the door just officially got slammed in their face. The White Sox managed to hang around in playoff contention throughout the season, but in a pivotal series against the Guardians here late in the season, they got swept when they absolutely needed to win those games to have any shred of a chance. And after that, they continued to free fall, and the Guardians just clinched the AL Central. So with their season pretty much officially in the books, let's take a look at what happened and figure out why this team couldn't live up to those expectations. Before we get into that though, if you're a fan of baseball, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We talk about anything and everything baseball on this channel, so if you're a fan of the MLB, I know you're gonna enjoy the content that we have here and you don't wanna miss out. Alright, let's talk about why the White Sox have been so bad this year. So Chicago finished the pandemic 2020 season at 35-25. This placed them second in the AL Central, and they ended up losing in the wild card series 2-1 to Oakland. Now that offseason, they continued to try to add pieces to this team. They traded pitchers Dane Dunning and Avery Weems to the Rangers to bring in the man of many fastballs, Lance Lynn, and they signed outfielders Adam Eaton and Adam Engel to 1-year deals. Now along with this, they signed closer Liam Hendriks to a 4-year, $54 million extension to make sure that they locked him in, and after non-tendering him earlier that offseason, they signed Carlos Rodon to a 1-year, $3 million prove-it deal. And prove it he did, but we'll get to that. Now, during the 2021 season, the Adam Eaton deal did not work out, so on July 7th, they DFA'd him. Now, when the trade deadline came around, Chicago was looking to buy, so they traded pitcher Connor Pilkington to the Indians for second baseman Cesar Hernandez. They traded pitcher Bailey Horn to the Cubs to bring in pitcher Ryan Tepera, and they traded their second baseman Nick Madrigal and a pitcher Cody Heuer to the Cubs for Craig Kimbrell. Now, Chicago finished the 2021 season at 93-69, getting first place in the AL Central. They had a Pythagorean win-loss of 97-65 due to a 796-636 run differential. Now, the White Sox ended up losing in the division series 3-1 to the Astros, who went on to the World Series, but expectations were still really high around this team. I mean, there was buzz for sure. People thought going into this next year that they could really do something. And taking a look at this team, you could see a couple reasons why they had success. 4 of the top 9 players on their team in terms of WAR were starting pitchers. Lance Lynn with 5.4, Carlos Rodon with 5, Giolito with 4.2, and Dylan Cease with 3. Now, for those who don't know, when you talk about WAR, Baseball Reference lists a 5 WAR season as about all-star level and 2 as starter level. So to have 4 starting pitchers between 5.5 and 3, that's a pretty damn good rotation, and deep at that. Now, to round out their pitching, their bullpen was solid. The top 6 guys in terms of innings pitched last season all had ERAs around 3.5 or lower, and there's a reason that Liam Hendriks got that $54 million extension. And when you take a look at the lineup, their top 4 paid position players all were big contributors. Tim Anderson had a 4.8 WAR season, Yon Moncada a 4, Yasmani Grandal 3.7, and Jose Abreu had a 3 as well. They also got some good contributions off the bench as Nick Madrigal, Gavin Sheets, and Adam Engel were all pretty solid. And I mean, overall as a team, there's a couple reasons why they were pretty damn good. They were 8th in runs per game despite having the 9th youngest position players. They finished 6th in walks, 5th in average, 3rd in on base, 10th in slugging, and had the 7th highest OPS and OPS plus in baseball. But like I kind of talked about earlier, I think the pitching was the main part of this team. They were 4th in runs allowed per game, 5th in ERA, 4th in ERA plus, finished 4th in fielding independent pitching, 5th in whip, 4th in hits per 9, 8th in walks per 9, and they were the top team in baseball in striking dudes out. Now, after such a successful season, they wanted to continue adding and keep making this team better. So they brought in pitchers Kendall Graveman on a 3-year, $24 million deal, Joe Kelly on a 2-year, $17 million deal, and Johnny Cueto on a 1-year, $4.2 million deal. They also added second baseman Josh Harrison on a 1-year, $5.5 million deal. They traded Craig Kimbrell to the Dodgers for outfielder AJ Pollock, and they swapped catchers with the Blue Jays, sending Zach Collins for Reese McGuire. Now, despite all of these additions to the team, probably the biggest thing that happened for this roster that offseason was Carlos Rodon walked in free agency. He signed a 2-year, $44 million deal with San Francisco that included an opt-out after the first season because despite his really good 21 season, he had kind of had an injury history, so the league was kind of hesitant on giving him big money, and he took this deal to prove it, and that's also worked out very well for him. And now we get to the 2022 season, which on May 28th, the White Sox ended up DFAing former Cy Young winner Dallas Keuchel, who had just continued to struggle with the team. And if you're interested in that story, I actually just did a video on that. Go check it out. All right, that's my plug. Get back to the video. On June 12th, they also ended up DFAing DH Yerman Mercedes, who had been struggling a bit, despite the fact he had caught the league by storm when he first came up, just by dropping dong shots and shooting piss missiles. Now, they also traded catcher Reese McGuire to the Red Sox for pitcher Jake Diekman, and they signed shortstop Elvis Andrus for a veteran presence and just some depth off the bench and stuff. But probably the biggest event of this season was just around the corner. Now, a lot of people have been really pissed off with how Tony La Russa had managed this team throughout the season. He had taken a lot of really old school approaches that backfired really badly, and I'm pretty sure at one point Chicago fans were chanting to fire Tony. But on August 30th, he stepped away from the team for medical issues, with the White Sox 63-65. Now, I'm gonna say, I wish Tony all the best. I hope he's healthy. I hope he's doing well. But if I put my conspiracy theorist hat on, this all seems kind of convenient. Now, it had kind of felt like this team had reached its boiling point, and people were fed up with La Russa, like I said. It seems really, really convenient that in the midst of all of this going on, La Russa has medical issues that seem to come out of nowhere. He gets to step away from the team, everybody wishing him well, and at the end of this season, when something inevitably comes out that he's just stepping away for his own benefit, that just seems like a move to save face when they just wanted him gone at that point. And because he's Tony La Russa, they didn't just shit can him, they gave him this out. Now, at the time of recording this, Chicago is 76-77. They're in second place in the AL Central, but they've been eliminated from playoff contention. They had a Pythagorean win-loss of 74-79, so I guess they've overperformed, yay! Now, 2022 has just been a huge disappointment for this team, and I mean, you can see it when you watch them. These guys seem to not really even give a shit about being here anymore. But that's too easy of an answer, so let's actually look at this team objectively and see why they haven't lived up to their expectations this year. Now, probably the biggest bright spot on this team this season has been starter Dylan Cease, who's put up 6.5 WAR and is right in the midst of the Cy Young race. The problem though is that despite how good Dylan Cease has been, they don't have the same depth in that rotation like they had last year. Johnny Cueto's put up a 3.5 WAR season, and Michael Kopech is at 2.2, but that's about it, and I'll get into that in a second. And while the bullpen has still been pretty good, it just hasn't quite been as solid as last year. There have been some kind of ups and downs and some moving parts due to some injuries and underperformance. Something else that stands out is a lot of the highest paid guys on this team simply haven't been able to, or just haven't contributed much this season. And that's because of either injuries or just some plain underperforming. Lance Lynn has only made 19 starts this year. Yasmani Grandal has a 579 OPS, AJ Pollock a 688, Yo Moncada has only played in 97 games and has a 630 OPS. Lucas Giolito's put up a 5.05 ERA. Eloy Jimenez has only played in 77 games, and Joe Kelly in 40 games has a 6.23 ERA. Now, all of this has kind of led to some highs and some lows for this team this season. They're now the 7th oldest position player group, and you think that age and experience would make them have better at bats and be a little bit more savvy, and they're 7th best in striking out and have the 3rd best average in the league, but they've had almost no power, having the 9th worst home runs, and they're the 2nd worst team at getting walked. Now their pitchers are also getting up there in age. They got the 8th oldest pitching staff. They still put up the 10th best fielding independent pitching. They're 7th best in home runs per 9 and 10th in strikeouts per 9, but their whip is the 10th worst in baseball, and they're the 9th worst in walking per 9, which is kind of leading to getting all those runners on base. So now we compare the two and we try to figure out why 2022 has been such a disappointment. And one of the things that I thought maybe could have been part of it due to their seemingly lack of effort is their fielding, but they've just been bad at fielding both years, so that's not it. Now there are some pretty clear differences between these two teams. The rotation last year was 4 starters solidly deep, and this year, despite having an ace that's in the middle of the Cy Young race, there hasn't really been much past that. Johnny Cueto's been good, Michael Kopech has been okay, but Lucas Giolito has struggled mightily, and Lance Lynn has missed a good portion of time. And overall, with the bullpen not being quite as solid as it was last year, this pitching staff has gone from the 5th best in whip last year to the 10th worst this year, large in part due to going from the 8th best in walks per 9 last season to the 9th worst. I'm telling you, those free base runners will always come back to kill you. The lineup has gone from the 9th youngest in baseball to the 7th oldest, and they went from 6th in getting walked last year to the 2nd worst. So you're not taking advantage of getting free bases. That's your own fucking fault. And for everybody that wants to say that money wins championships, it doesn't for Chicago, because they've spent $55 million more this season. But when you live by big contracts, you die by big contracts. And having a bunch of guys this season that are on the top of your payroll not perform and not be on the field, you can see the results of that. Now, this is my opinion of why Chicago's been the 2022 most disappointing team, but tell me what you think. What have you seen that's made this team so bad, and why didn't they live up to their expectations this season? And if you made it this far in the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please drop a like on the video. It helps it spread out to other baseball fans so they could enjoy it as well. And also make sure you subscribe to the page, because we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different baseball topics on here. So you're clearly a fan of baseball. I think you're going to enjoy it. This has been the Mound Visit. Thank you as always. You can check out some of my other videos. Have an awesome day. I'll see you in the next one.